7 Apache girls left hang to dying until the rancher shows up. Vertical bar, best Wild West stories. Jack Colton stood at the edge of his land, looking out over the vast, empty desert. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and orange, but there was little to celebrate. His farm was barely surviving, the soil dry and cracked. The wind, hot and unforgiving, swept across the barren land. Jack wiped the sweat from his brow, his body aching from another long day under the scorching sun. For years he had worked this land, hoping for a miracle. But the desert wasn't kind to farmers. Jack knew it. The crops had withered, the cattle had died, and the promise of a fruitful harvest seemed like a distant dream. But Jack wasn't ready to give up. He couldn't. This farm was all he had left, the only thing tying him to his father's legacy. That evening, as Jack was packing up for the night, a strange feeling swept over him. The wind began to pick up, whipping the dust into a frenzy. The sky darkened, and in the distance Jack saw the telltale signs of a sandstorm forming. He hurried to secure his tools, but it was too late. The storm hit quickly, blindsiding him as the world turned into a blur of dust and wind. Jack tried to make his way back to the small shack he called home, but the storm was relentless. The sand stung his face, and he could barely see more than a few feet in front of him. His heart raced as he stumbled through the desert searching for shelter, but there was nothing. The world around him was a wall of sand, and Jack felt helpless, the storm closing in on him. His legs grew weak, and his breath came in short gasps. He felt the cold grip of fear tighten around his chest. Jack had faced hard times before, but nothing like this. The storm was too strong, too powerful. He was no match for it. As his vision blurred and his body gave out, Jack collapsed to the ground, the desert swallowing him whole. Jack didn't know how long he was out. When he woke, the storm had passed, and the sun was beginning to rise. His body ached from the cold, and his throat felt dry as sandpaper. He was still lying in the desert, but he wasn't alone. Standing above him was a figure, a tall woman dressed in simple but worn clothing. Her skin was the color of the earth, and her dark eyes shone with a piercing intensity. She had long black hair, and her face was strong, yet there was a softness in her expression that seemed to belong to someone out of place in this harsh world. Who are you?" Jack asked, his voice hoarse. The woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she knelt down and studied him, as if deciding whether to trust him. Her gaze softened slightly, and then she spoke. "I am Zara, of the Apache," she said, her voice deep and steady. Jack blinked, still disoriented. "Apache? What are you doing out here?" Zara's eyes scanned the horizon, where the sand still swirled in the distance. "I live out here. I watch the desert. It has its own way of taking care of things. It is not kind to those who do not respect it." Jack struggled to sit up, still feeling the effects of the storm. "I didn't mean to. I didn't know I was so far out." Zara studied him for a long moment, her face unreadable. Then, without a word, she extended her hand to him. Jack hesitated but took it, and Zara pulled him up effortlessly, as though he weighed nothing. "Come with me," she said. "You are far from where you need to be. You will be safe." Jack didn't know why, but he followed her. He had no other choice. His legs were shaky, and he was unsure how much longer he could stand. Zara led him through the desert, walking with a calm assurance. There was something about her presence that made him feel a little less alone, a little less afraid. As they walked, Jack noticed something strange about the land. It wasn't just barren desert. There were signs of life. A few small animals darting across the sand, and in the distance he could see the outline of a small structure. Zara's home. Zara didn't speak much as they walked, but Jack didn't mind. He was exhausted, and the silence was a comfort. When they reached her home, Jack was surprised by how simple yet solid it looked. It was made of stone and wood, with a thatched roof. A fire pit sat in front of the door, and smoke rose lazily into the air. There was a small garden, too, with a few hardy plants growing in the dry earth. "Come inside," Zara said, and Jack followed her into the small dwelling. The interior was simple but warm. A fire crackled in the center, and the smell of cooked food filled the air. Zara moved to a small table and set down a bowl of stew. "You must be hungry," she said, pushing the bowl toward him. Jack didn't hesitate. He was starving. He took the bowl and ate gratefully, savoring the warmth of the food. As he ate, Zara watched him, her eyes never leaving his face. After a while, Jack set the bowl down and looked at her. "Thank you. But why are you helping me?" I'm just a farmer. I don't know anything about living out here. Zara's expression softened. You are not just a farmer. You are someone who has survived the desert. That means you have strength. Jack was about to reply when Zara stood up and walked toward a small bed in the corner of the room. It was large, almost too large for one person. She turned to Jack and said, "You will sleep on my bed. I will sleep on the floor." Jack stared at her, confused. What? Why? Zara's eyes locked onto his, her voice firm. It is a tradition. The strong must offer their protection to those who are weaker. I trust you, but you must rest. You have much to learn. Jack was taken aback. He had never heard of such a tradition, but something about Zara's presence made him feel he couldn't argue. He nodded slowly, though part of him was uncomfortable with the idea. But he was too tired to question her further. Zara didn't wait for a reply. She moved to the floor and lay down, pulling a blanket over herself. Jack, still unsure of what was happening, climbed into the bed. It was surprisingly comfortable, and the warmth of the fire soon lulled him into a deep sleep. The sun was setting over the vast desert. The hot wind blew across the dry, cracked earth, pushing dust and sand through the air. Jack Colton stood on the porch of his small farm, wiping the sweat from his forehead. He had worked the land all day, trying to make it produce something. Anything. But the soil was stubborn. Nothing he did seemed to help. His father had once dreamed of this farm thriving, but that dream felt far away now. The crops had failed, the cattle were weak, and the desert seemed to grow stronger each day. Jack was alone in the world, working the land that had been passed down to him, trying to keep his father's legacy alive. But it was hard, so very hard. Jack sighed as he looked out at the endless stretch of sand. He knew he had to keep trying, but the desert was merciless. It didn't care about dreams or hard work, it only took, and Jack was starting to wonder how much more he could give. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a dark shape appeared on the edge of the land. Jack squinted, trying to make out what it was. The wind had picked up and the sand was swirling in the air, but the figure remained, growing larger as it moved closer. Jack couldn't see much, but the shape was tall. It didn't look like a man, and it wasn't a coyote or any other animal Jack had seen in these parts. His heart raced a little, but he stood his ground. In the desert, you learned not to run at the first sign of danger. You had to face it, or it would consume you. The figure grew closer still. And then Jack saw her. A woman. She was tall, much taller than any woman Jack had ever seen. She wore simple clothes made from rough fabric and leather, and her long black hair flowed behind her like a dark river. Her skin was dark, like the earth itself, and her eyes shone with a piercing intensity. Jack didn't know whether to be afraid or curious. She was nothing like anyone he had ever met. When she was close enough, the woman stopped and looked at him. She didn't speak at first, just studied him with a steady gaze. There was something both calm and strong about her, a quiet power that made Jack feel like he was standing before something ancient. "Are you lost?" Jack asked, his voice rough from the dry air. The woman tilted her head slightly as if considering the question. Then she spoke, her voice deep and calm. "No, I live here," she said, her eyes never leaving his. Jack blinked, surprised. "You live out here? In the desert?" The woman nodded. "Yes, the desert is my home." For a moment, Jack didn't know what to say. He had always thought of the desert as an unforgiving place, a place where nothing could survive. But this woman, this giant Apache girl, seemed different. She didn't seem to fear the land, or the heat, or the loneliness. She seemed at peace with it all. "My name is Zara," she said, breaking the silence, "and you are far from your home." Jack took a step back, unsure of what to do. "I don't have a home," he muttered. "Not anymore. This farm was my father's, but it's failing." Zara's expression softened for a moment, though her gaze remained steady. "I know the desert is hard, but it does not take what it does not need. It only takes what is weak." Jack didn't know how to respond to that. He had always thought that if he worked hard enough, he could make the land give him something in return. But it seemed like Zara saw things differently. "You should come with me," Zara said, turning and starting to walk away. "The storm is coming. You will not survive out here alone." The storm was already beginning to form on the horizon, a dark cloud of swirling dust and wind. He knew he should return to his small shack, but he also knew that it wouldn't protect him from the storm. He had no choice. "All right," he said, following her. "I'll go with you." Zara didn't say anything more as she led Jack through the desert. Her long strides were sure and steady, while Jack struggled to keep up. The wind grew stronger, and the sand began to whip through the air. Jack pulled his scarf over his face to shield himself from the dust. They walked for what felt like hours, the sandstorm closing in around them. The desert, once so vast and empty, now seemed like a wild, untamable force. Jack's legs ached, and his breath came in short gasps. But Zara kept walking, never pausing, as if she knew exactly where she was going. Finally, through the storm, Jack saw a small shelter in the distance. It was a simple structure made of stone and wood, but it was sturdy and seemed like a safe place to rest. When they reached the shelter, Zara pushed open the door and gestured for Jack to enter. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of herbs and wood smoke. A fire burned in the center of the room, and there was a simple bed made from thick blankets and furs. "Sit," Zara said, pointing to a chair near the fire. Jack sat down gratefully, feeling the warmth of the fire on his skin. Zara went to a small table and began preparing something in a pot. The smell of food filled the room, and Jack's stomach growled. He hadn't eaten since the morning. "Eat," Zara said, handing him a bowl of stew. "You will need your strength." Jack took the bowl and began eating. The stew was simple but filling, and Jack ate it quickly. He hadn't realized how hungry he was until now. As he ate, Zara watched him carefully, her expression unreadable. When he finished, he set the bowl down and looked at her. "Thank you," he said, his voice quieter now. "But why are you helping me? I don't even know you." Zara's eyes softened slightly, and she sat across from him. "You are weak, but you have strength. You have survived the desert. That means something." Jack didn't know what to say to that. He had never thought of himself as strong. But maybe, just maybe, Zara saw something in him that he hadn't seen before. Zara stood up and moved to a small bed in the corner of the room. It was large, much larger than Jack would have expected for one person. "You will sleep on my bed," she said, turning to face him. "I will sleep on the floor." Jack blinked, confused. "What?" Zara's eyes locked onto his, her voice firm. "It is a tradition. The strong must offer protection to those who are weak." Jack didn't know what to think. This woman, this giant Apache girl, was offering him her bed without any explanation or hesitation, but he felt too tired to argue. He didn't know what Zara's tradition meant, but he knew he had no place to go, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel quite so alone. He nodded slowly. "I'll sleep there." Zara didn't say anything more as she lay down on the floor. Jack, still unsure of what was happening, climbed into the bed. It was soft and warm, and the fire crackled softly in the background. But as Jack lay there, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something much bigger than he could understand. The morning after the storm, Jack woke to the sound of the wind whistling through the cracks in the shelter. He sat up slowly, feeling the stiffness in his muscles. The bed he had slept in was surprisingly comfortable, but the memories of the night before made him feel uneasy. Zara had offered him her bed, a tradition of sorts, but Jack still didn't understand it completely. The desert was a harsh, unforgiving place, and yet Zara seemed to know how to live with it. Jack had no such knowledge, no skills to survive in this strange land. When he stood up and moved to the door, the bright light of the morning sun hit him. He squinted against the glare and stepped outside. The desert stretched out before him, as vast and empty as it had been the day before. He didn't see Zara immediately. She was nowhere in sight. "Zara?" Jack called out. A low sound came from behind him. He turned to find Zara standing near the fire pit, her dark eyes fixed on him. She was cleaning a blade, sharpening it carefully with a stone. She didn't seem surprised by his presence, though Jack felt he had disturbed her peace. "You are awake early," she said, without looking up. "Good. We must begin." Jack nodded, but wasn't sure what she meant. The desert felt endless, and every direction seemed the same. He had no idea what he was supposed to do here, and that made him nervous.
Zara finished sharpening the blade and turned to face Jack.
She didn't speak for a moment, just studied him. Jack felt her gaze steady and serious, weighing him. It was as if she was looking for something inside him, something only she could see. "You survived the storm," Zara said at last. "But the desert is not kind. It takes and it tests. Now you will learn." Jack swallowed hard, unsure what she was referring to. "What do you mean? I'm not a warrior." "I'm just a farmer." Zara gave him a small smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "The desert does not care about what you were. It only cares about what you are now." She motioned for Jack to follow her. With no choice but to obey, he fell into step behind her as she walked toward the edge of the shelter. There, in the distance, a group of riders appeared. They were moving toward them, slowly and deliberately, as if they had all the time in the world. "Who are they?" Jack asked, his curiosity growing. Zara didn't answer at first. She continued walking, her pace unhurried. "My people," she said simply. Jack's heart raced. He had heard stories of the Apache, fierce warriors who roamed the desert. He had never imagined he would meet one, let alone be living with one. The riders were getting closer, and Jack could now see that they were all women, strong, confident, with hard eyes and steady hands. Their horses moved as one, like a well-coordinated team. When they arrived, Zara greeted them with a nod, and they dismounted. Jack was struck by how similar they looked to Zara, tall, strong, and with an undeniable air of authority. There was no fear in their eyes, just a calm certainty. It was as though they were all part of the same force, a force that the desert had made, not broken. Zara turned to Jack. "These women are my family. They are the heart of our tribe." Jack nodded, unsure of what to say. He felt out of place among these strong, fearless women, but Zara's presence made him feel slightly more at ease. "You are part of my tribe now," Zara continued, her voice low but clear. "You will learn from us, and you will help us. Today, you will prove that you have strength." "Strength?" Jack repeated, confused. "But I don't know anything about surviving out here. I'm just trying to make a living, that's all." Zara's eyes softened, but her expression remained serious. "Strength is not just about surviving. It is about knowing the land, understanding it, respecting it. The desert is not just a place. It is alive. It will give you what you need if you learn how to ask for it." The women of the tribe moved around Jack, preparing for what seemed like a long journey. They worked together in a way that was both effortless and efficient. Jack watched them, mesmerized by their skill and grace. They spoke in their native tongue, and although Jack didn't understand their words, he could hear the bond between them. They weren't just a group of individuals. They were a family, a unit that thrived in the harshest of conditions. Zara turned to Jack and held out a leather pouch. "You will need this," she said, placing it in his hands. "Inside is everything you will need to survive on this journey." Jack opened the pouch carefully and found a few essential items: water, dried meat, a small knife, and some herbs. It wasn't much, but it seemed like everything he would need for a day in the desert. He closed the pouch and looked at Zara, still unsure of what to expect. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. Zara smiled. "Follow us." They set off into the desert, and Jack found himself walking alongside the tribe. The heat was unbearable, and the sand seemed to stretch endlessly before him. But Zara and the others moved with purpose, as if they knew exactly where they were going. Jack tried to keep up, but the weight of the heat and the unfamiliar land made it difficult. His legs ached, and his mouth was dry, but he refused to fall behind. Zara was right. He had to prove his strength. As they walked, Zara explained some of the basics of surviving in the desert. She taught Jack how to read the land, the patterns in the sand, the way the wind moved, the position of the sun. The desert wasn't just empty space, it was a living, breathing part of the world, with its own rules. If Jack could learn those rules, he could survive here. They walked for hours, and by the time the sun began to set, Jack was exhausted. His body screamed for rest, but there was no stopping. Zara didn't slow down, and neither did the other women. They were relentless in their pace, and Jack realized that this was part of the test. He had to keep going, even when his body wanted to give up. When the night fell, Zara led them to a small oasis. It was nothing more than a patch of green among the dry earth, but it was a place of life. The women set up camp, lighting a small fire and preparing food. Jack sank to the ground, his body sore and aching, but he felt a strange sense of pride. He had made it through the day. As they sat around the fire, Zara spoke again, her voice low and steady. "You have done well today, Jack. But this is only the beginning." Jack looked at her, unsure of what she meant. "What do you mean?" Zara's eyes met his, and for the first time Jack saw something soft in them, a kind of understanding. "Tomorrow will be harder."
"You will face your fears. You will learn what you are truly made of."
Jack didn't know what to expect, but he knew one thing. He was no longer just a lonely farmer. He was part of something bigger. And whatever came next, he was ready to face it. The morning after the oasis, Jack awoke to the soft chirping of birds. The desert night had been cold, but the fire they had built kept the worst of it at bay. As Jack sat up, he noticed the women of Zara's tribe already moving around the camp. They worked together in perfect harmony, collecting water from the oasis and preparing food for the day. Zara, as always, was at the center of it all, giving orders with a quiet authority that everyone seemed to respect. Jack stretched, feeling the soreness in his body. He had walked for hours the day before, and his legs felt heavy, as if they were made of stone. He was exhausted, but he couldn't afford to stop now. Zara had promised him that today would be harder than the day before, and the thought of what lay ahead filled him with both fear and determination. "You are up early," Zara said, her voice calm as she approached him. She handed him a bowl of water, and Jack drank greedily. The cool liquid refreshed him, but he still felt the weight of the journey ahead. Zara's eyes studied him, her expression unreadable. "Today we will test you further," she said. "You will learn what it means to be truly strong." Jack nodded. He wasn't sure what she meant, but he had learned to trust her. She hadn't steered him wrong so far. And despite his doubts, he could feel something changing within himself. He was becoming more than just a farmer. He was becoming part of something bigger. The desert, with all its harshness, was teaching him lessons he would never have learned back home. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Zara led the group deeper into the desert. The heat was already unbearable, but the women moved with purpose, their steps sure and steady. Jack struggled to keep up, his body still sore from the previous day, but he refused to show weakness. He wasn't going to fall behind. Not now. After what felt like hours of walking, Zara stopped suddenly. The others gathered around her, and Jack joined them, his heart pounding in his chest. Zara turned to face the group, her eyes scanning the horizon. "We are close," she said. "This is the place where we test our strength." Jack looked around, confused. All he saw was sand stretching endlessly in every direction. But Zara's words had a weight to them, and Jack knew that this was no ordinary test. Zara spoke again, her voice low but firm. "This is where you will face your fear." Jack's stomach tightened. Fear? What fear? He had faced so many challenges already. The desert, the storm, the journey with Zara and her tribe. It had all been difficult, but he had survived. He was starting to believe he could survive anything. But something in Zara's voice told him that this was different. "You must walk through the sandstorm," Zara continued. "It is not the storm itself that will test you, but your mind. You will walk through it, alone, and find your way to the other side. It is the only way to prove that you are truly strong." Jack's heart skipped a beat. The thought of walking alone through a sandstorm terrified him. He had heard the stories of men who had been lost to the desert, swallowed up by the winds and the sand. But Zara was right. He had to prove himself. This was the test. He turned to look at Zara, his voice shaky. "How do I find my way through it?" Zara's eyes softened. "Trust yourself. Trust the desert. It will guide you if you are willing to listen." With that, she stepped aside, and the other women formed a circle around Jack. He stood in the middle, his mind racing. He had no choice. He had to do this. For himself, for Zara, for the desert. Jack took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. He wasn't going to let fear control him. Not anymore. He turned and began walking toward the edge of the desert, where the wind was starting to pick up again. The sandstorm hit with sudden force. The wind howled in his ears, and the sand stung his skin. It felt as though the very earth was trying to swallow him whole. But Jack kept moving, one step at a time. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew he couldn't stop. The storm roared around him, but Jack pushed through it, focusing on the steady rhythm of his footsteps. His mind began to clear, and he started to trust the desert, just as Zara had said. He could feel the sand shifting beneath his feet, guiding him, as if the land itself was showing him the way. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Jack couldn't tell. The storm was so thick, so blinding, that time seemed to stand still. But Jack didn't give up. He couldn't. He had made it this far, and he wasn't about to let the desert defeat him now. Eventually, the storm began to subside. The wind softened, and the sand stopped whipping around him. Jack squinted into the distance, and to his surprise, he saw the faint outline of the oasis in the distance. He had made it. He had survived the storm. With a rush of relief, Jack stumbled forward, his body trembling from the strain. When he reached the oasis, he collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. Zara and the women of the tribe were waiting for him, their faces filled with silent approval. "You did it," Zara said, her voice low but proud. "You faced your fear and survived." Jack didn't know what to say. He had done it. He had walked through the storm, alone, and found his way to the other side. For the first time since he had arrived in the desert, Jack felt a deep sense of pride. He had proven to himself that he was strong. That evening, as the fire crackled and the tribe gathered around it, Zara turned to Jack. Her expression was calm, but there was something new in her eyes. Respect. "You have done well," she said. "You have shown the strength of the desert, and you have earned your place among us." Jack nodded, still feeling the weight of the journey in his bones. But there was something else now, something he hadn't expected. He wasn't just a stranger in the desert anymore. He was part of something. Part of Zara's tribe. Part of the land. Zara motioned for him to sit beside her. "Tomorrow we will teach you more. But tonight you rest." Jack looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. He had come to the desert looking for something, he didn't know what. But now he realized that he had found it. He had found strength. He had found a family. As Jack lay down that night, looking up at the stars, he knew that this was just the beginning of a new life. The desert, the tribe, and Zara had given him something he had never known before. A chance to be more than he ever thought he could be. And for the first time in a long while, Jack felt truly at peace.